Hello YouTube, my name is Nathan Lindorf. I've decided to start this channel in order to add a new voice of reason to our current political discourse. We spend a lot of energy applying and misapplying labels to each other and ourselves. So let me start by briefly introducing myself. I have lived all over the western United States and currently reside in Arizona. I am a registered independent who has voted in every presidential election and most congressional and local elections since I was old enough. I'm a married father of 4 small children who will probably sneak their way into some of these videos because anything daddy's doing must be meddled with. I have the great blessing of a job that requires a lot of travel. This gives me the opportunity to consume a tremendous amount of audiobooks, podcasts, and YouTube commentary. This channel is my own attempt to share my thoughts and analysis. While I briefly studied philosophy in college, I am by no means an academic. Having a rigorous framework for thought is a wonderful goal for each of us. I intend to keep this content of this channel more accessible than that. One reason for this is because each of us now has access to far more raw information than our brains can consume, so we necessarily pare it down to a more manageable number of topics. Unfortunately, this leaves us ignorant on important issues. Each of us then has blind spots and holes in our knowledge where we rely on friends, experts, or common sense to cover the gaps. Too often the sources we rely on emphasize outrageous and fear-provoking information, which we are vulnerable to because of that ignorance. This feedback loop creates a very tribal approach to politics, makes it difficult to reach genuine common ground with someone with whom we disagree. Technology platforms exacerbate this by shaping the information we're presented with. Several years ago, I read the excellent book, Crucial Conversations. One of the key principles I pulled out of that book is that as humans, we are typically unskilled in handling conflict. Often we flex and ignore irritations on unimportant issues, but from time to time there is genuine disagreement on an issue that can't be ignored. In this circumstance, the disagreement must be skillfully confronted in order to be resolved. The typical response to this confrontation is to resort to silence or violence, and it requires skill and patience to ensure both parties remain calm and stay engaged while the issue is worked through. Human history is replete with examples of opposing parties that first stop talking and eventually resort to violence. My first and primary purpose for this channel is to create bridges between the partisan camps that dot the cultural landscape. My hope is that those bridges will allow our society to stave off a descent into violence. Rationalizing your own position and learning to genuinely understand another person's position is intensely difficult work, but it's the only path I can see to keep civil discourse alive. The method that I use in my personal life, and that I'll be presenting through this channel, is to take a controversial issue, policy, or personality and decide what the key principles are that support or oppose them. Then I decide my own support by comparing those principles to my own. If I can find common principles that we can both stand on, I've created a bridge. I've found I don't agree with anyone 100% of the time. Even my wife or children prioritize different principles. But 100% agreement isn't the goal, which is good because it's impossible. Instead, we should focus on identifying the most important part of our principles and form strong bridges to other people in our lives who share those principles. I was inspired to start this channel through the efforts of the intellectual dark web. If you're not familiar with the term, this term refers to a disparate group of thinkers and commentators who have bridged the differences between their various camps by standing on the principle that free speech and the free thought that is implied is an absolute human right and must be defended from those who would abridge it on the road towards tyranny. The bridge building work I'm proposing is basically the opposite of the algorithmic sorting so endemic throughout social media. Social media companies make content decisions based on what drives traffic, not what is right, correct, or worthwhile. I have many more thoughts on social media, but that's outside the scope of this video. My thesis for this channel is pretty straightforward. The founding documents for the United States of America set forth the clearest articulation of core human rights principles to be found anywhere in the world. Based on my life experiences, I have found I can find agreement on most of these core principles with almost everyone. This tells me that the forces that seek to label and divide us are exaggerating those differences. In the rare circumstance where I can't find agreement on these principles, I know for certain that dialogue will not resolve my differences with that person. This sort of person is usually an active proponent of an authoritarian and oppressive system of government. According to this thesis, each of my videos will discuss one or two core principles as laid out in those founding documents, then break down an issue of the day and see how it stacks up against those principles. My hope is that this perspective will allow us to cut past the convenient labels and categories we attach to each other. Career, family, and church obligations consume the lion's share of my time, so for the foreseeable future, I intend to publish a new video once a week on Sundays. I have a lot of things to say and no topics are off limits, so feel free to suggest topics or principles you'd like to see in future videos in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and thank you for thinking. Cheers.